This is booked for drama, where stories burn, hearts break, the tea is always hot and never a part 2. Today we're diving into Find the Hot Dog Lady. Let's go. I sold hot dogs in a horror game after their shifts. The monsters all came to me for a delicious, sizzling Chicago-style hot dog. That was until one day my ex-husband, Vincent Shaw, addicted to domestic violence, entered the game as a player. He swung a baseball bat, knocking me out, trying to drag me back to the real world. When the monsters got off work and found the hot dog stand empty, they went berserk, searching the entire game world for me. Meanwhile, all players were hunted by dungeon bosses, forced to answer deadly questions. Did you kidnap the hot dog lady? Player forums even posted an evil bounty mission, Find the Hot Dog Lady. On my first day in the horror game, a man in a sharp suit asked me what skills I had. I thought about it all day and all night, then admitted, I can make hot dogs. He looked utterly exasperated, but still handed me a stall and vanished, leaving me with the keys. I spent half a day cleaning the stall, then returned to the real world to buy supplies. I opened for business as the blood-red moon rose. Perhaps the spot was too out of the way. Hours passed without a single customer. I tried to pet myself up. The aroma of food will bring them in. Just be patient. My stomach chose that moment to growl loudly. So I decided to make myself a hot dog first. I opened a pack of buns, lightly grilling them on the bakeware until golden brown. The smell began to drift up. I placed the sausages in the warming tray and toasted the smashed onions on the grill. Weirdly, the stall had everything. Bakeware, grill, warming tray. Nothing was missing aside from a thin layer of dust. Practically tailor-made for a hot dog stand. Had the previous owner sold hot dogs too? I shook my head. This was a horror game. It was a miracle there weren't screams echoing around. Who'd sell hot dogs here? Timing it perfectly, I expertly pulled the buns off the grill, now toasted to a perfect crisp. Glistening with grease, I slotted the buns with my special sauce, layered on lettuce and crisp bacon, added 2 sausages, and topped them with diced pickled jalapenos. One delicious, mouth-watering Chicago-style hot dog was ready, but it still felt like something was missing. I boiled some spicy chili mac and piled it on top, finishing with a soda. Taking the first bite, I sighed. Best damn thing hadn't changed a bit. After all these years, I savored my meal, completely oblivious to the fact that the smell had drifted out of the stall, catching the attention of a passing monster. A pair of old ballet slippers appeared at the stall. The temperature dropped several degrees. The air chill in a strangely pleasant way. A chilling voice whispered in my ear, "What are you eating?" "Smells so good." Instinct kicked in and I stood to greet the customer. "Welcome. This is our specialty, the super duper deluxe Chicago dog. Would you like to?" I looked around but saw no one. Then I felt someone standing right in front of me. I finished. "Would you like one?" A small hand struggled to lift a patch of coins onto the counter. "One please," came the tiny voice. I leaned over and looked down. A little girl in a tattered antique wedding dress stared up at me with wide, hopeful eyes. Oh, not invisible, just a really short kid. Her pouch seemed full, at least 20 gold coins. I sorted through them, found the smallest copper coin and handed the rest back. "This one is enough." Then I began making the hot dog. Seeing how thin and small she was, my heart ached. I piled on 5 sausages, threw everything into the buns, bacon, crispy chicken strips, fried onions, melted cheese, spicy chili mac. The buns split in several places under the mountain of toppings. I handed it to her. "Enough, kiddo." The girl stared, stunned at the enormous hot dog. Then suddenly her body seemed to swell, her mouth stretching wide, and she shoved the entire thing in at once. Munch, munch, munch. This is heavenly. So good," she mumbled mid-bite. I slowly raised a feminine. "Damn impressive. First time anyone had ever finished one of my super-duper deluxe Chicago dogs in a single bite." I was moved to tears. 100 customers like this, please. The next day she brought friends. A lanky guy with a rope burn on his neck. A waterlogged woman dripping everywhere, and another in tattered wedding fragments. All of them wore antique tattered dresses. Feeling sorry for them, I made each a super hot dog, 10 sausages each. They stuffed their faces, bulging. "This hot dog is amazing. I've never tasted anything so good." They relaxed, chatting with me. I learned they'd all been tied up as sacrifices to forest spirits by villagers. My heart broke. I made each of them 3 more hot dogs to take away. "Anytime you guys want to eat, just come by. Stalls free. Hot dogs on me." They left happy and full, promising to spread the word. Sweet kids. By afternoon, my stall was packed with monsters. I wished for extra arms as I worked. Every customer became an instant convert. Just like that, my hot dogs became famous in the horror game. Every monster stopped by after work for a delicious, sizzling Chicago dog. The toasted bun hugged the savory sausage piled high with juicy toppings, crispy bacon and melted cheese. One bite, pure flavor explosion. Even a monster covered in eyeballs only could taste this and swoon. Is life worth living? Business boomed. I kept running out of supplies, making frequent trips to the real world to restock. Players had started noticing me, always coming back alive. They tried recruiting me. I flat out refused. I was a player, yes, but I never entered a dungeon to kill monsters to level up. I just ran my stall. I figured I must be a special case. My secret was safe. I hid whenever players came near. But one day, a dozen of them walked straight into my stall. My spot was remote, deep in the dungeon. They must have gotten lost. I ducked behind the counter, hoping they'd leave. They wore matching gear, faces masked, weapons ready. At first, they were jumpy. A sausage popped loudly in the warmer. Instant chaos. My carefully set up stall became a war zone. Tables splintered, chairs flew. Realizing no threats or NPCs appeared, they lowered their masks and collapsed onto the floor. "We can chill here a bit," one said. The leader nodded, removing his mask. My eyes widened, dense familiar. My ex-husband. Fear washed over me, like ice. Old bruises came to mind. I stumbled back, knocking over a stool. Denson snapped alert, striding toward the counter. Seeing me, his eyes lit up. Next thing I knew, the baseball bat in his hand slammed down on me. I could see, could hear, couldn't speak or move. Other players gathered, joking. "Hey boss, found a pretty one. When you're done, share with the boys," Vincent sneered. "That's my wife. Ran off with some other guy. Never thought I'd catch her here." He spotted a hot dog on the counter and sneered. "Set up shop, playing house." He grabbed a weapon, smashed the counter and hurled my freshly made hot dog to the floor. Stomped on it viciously. "You belong to the chef's family, alive or dead. Think you can run the hot dog stand?" The hot dog was covered in dirt. A customer had already ordered it. They'd be here after work. I pleaded with my eyes for Vincent to stop. It only made him angrier, begging for world help. "Wait till I get you back to the real world," he seemed to think. Players couldn't attack other players without severe penalties. But the real world? No rules. Perfect. I'm starved. "Going to try your famous hot dog," Vincent muttered. He grabbed a deluxe hot dog and took a huge bite. He choked, spat out a finger, screamed, hurled the dog away, and slapped me hard. "What the hell did you put in there?" I rolled my eyes. It wasn't for humans. The Stitcher from the Haunted Manor had ordered it, along with orders from a dozen other bosses in the horror game. They'd be here in less than an hour. Knock, 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 knock. Someone was at the door. The player snapped alert, weapons aimed, but nothing was outside. "Lee," one of the players, relaxed. "Just spooking ourselves. This place is a ghost town. No players, no NPCs, no monsters." They didn't see the hand sneaking in. Literally a hand. I recognized it instantly, the Stitcher's right hand. He must be on overtime at the manor, sent Lefty to pick up the order. But Lefty was shy, traveling only via drains or sewers to avoid startling me. He always knocked first. Lefty expertly weaved past the players, reaching the counter area. He paused, confused at the wreckage of my stall, then spotted the stone-cold hot dog on the floor, fingers curling into fists. Lefty was pissed. Vincent had hit me in the back. I watched through a small window. Lefty crawled onto a player's back, tapped his right shoulder. The player looked, saw nothing. "What guy next him didn't touch you?" Vincent went on high alert, ordering the others to use detection gear. The scanners read 0, nada, sip. "You still spooked from that Scarlet Bride back in the dungeon?" One player joked. They laughed, one saying he needed to pee. Heading for the corner, 3 seconds later a scream pierced from the makeshift bathroom. Lefty struck again. Multiple SS class bosses were incoming, closing fast. Another scanner screamed, "SS class 2, moving at impossible speed." And we weren't even in a dungeon. Why? So many big bosses didn't just stand there. "Run." One player bolted for the door. Instantly, the starter materialized in the doorway. Lefty zipped back onto his perch. The starter adjusted his tie, politely knocked 3 times. "Madam, here for my hot dogs," he said. He saw the hot dogs scattered across the floor, the empty spot where I should have been. The Stitcher erupted, citrus strained to bursting. "Who touched my hot dog?" The Stitcher's voice thundered across the stall, high-pitched and citrus strained. "Who touched my hot dog?" I ducked behind the counter, desperately grabbing whatever I could, tongs, a spatula, a rolling pin. This was not a drill. This was war. Vincent froze mid-step, his smirk faltering as the first SS-class boss materialized at the doorway. It was a hulking thing, its limbs too long, eyes glinting like molten gold. And behind it, more appeared, streaming through walls, floor cracks, even the ceiling, like the entire dungeon had developed a taste for my hot dogs. I scrambled to the warming tray, grabbing the few intact deluxe Chicago dogs and tossing them to the nearest monsters. Miraculously, it worked. One boss snagged a hot dog midair and paused, chewing contemplatively. Another followed, tilting its head as if savoring flavors it had never known. "Wait, they like it?" I whispered, disbelief softening the fear. Monsters, horrific, blood-red, clawed, were smiling. Or, at least, what pass for smiles in this dimension? Vincent's face twisted in anger. "What? They can't. They're monsters. They're supposed to destroy. He gestured wildly, baseball bat swinging. "You." The other players around him panicked, scanning the room with blinking detection gear. Their screens screamed multiple SS-class intruders inbound. They dropped weapons, shields, and anything that rattled when the bosses appeared. Chaos erupted. I seized the moment. Rolling under the counter, I grabbed a bag of tongs, a tray of steaming buns, and the bottle of chili mac I'd made earlier. Improvised weapons had never tasted so good or smelled so delicious. The first boss lunged at me, but I swung the tongs like a baton, slapping a hot dog into its face. It staggered back, licking the sausage off its claw. I couldn't help but grin. Yes, hot dogs, my secret weapon. Vincent's panic deepened. He barked orders, trying to coordinate his team, but the bosses ignored him entirely. Focused only on the delicious smells. His carefully planned hunt was collapsing into a comedy of culinary warfare. I darted behind the counter again, tossing another chili, matte-coated hot dog. A tiny shriek of delight echoed from the shadows. One of the antique-dressed kids had returned with her friends. They began tossing buns to nearby monsters, shouting, "Eat, eat, make it super-duper deluxe." Somehow my little helpers turned the tide. The monsters, distracted and sated, began forming a semi-orderly line for food instead of attacking. I leaned on the counter, panting and muttered, never thought I'd see the day my stall could stop a monster apocalypse. Vincent, livid and humiliated, slammed the bat onto the floor. This isn't over, he spat before backing toward the exit. Even he knew he couldn't challenge a mob of hungry, happy SS-class bosses with my secret recipe in play. And just like that, the horror game's deadliest bosses were now loyal customers. I stood amidst the wreckage of my stall, surveying the chaos. Chairs splintered, toppings smeared across the floor, buns squashed beyond recognition. But somehow, it had worked. I had survived. My hot dogs had survived. And Vincent? He was going to have to rethink everything. The smell of burned buns and spilled chili mac still lingered in the air, mixing oddly with a coppery tang of panic. I leaned against what remained of my counter, wiping sweat from my forehead. The monsters had finally wandered off, bellies full and spirits satisfied. Vincent and his gang had vanished, muttering threats I knew they couldn't enforce here. But vanished didn't mean safe. Not in this game. I glanced at the wreckage and realized something terrifying. My stall, my precious hot dog empire, was vulnerable. One wrong move, and I'd either be flattened under SS-class claws or dragged back into the real world by Vincent. Survival wasn't just about cooking anymore. It was about hiding. I needed a plan. The first clue came in the form of a faint glow beneath a trapdoor I'd never noticed. My stall had never been ordinary. Why had I assumed it was just a patch of floor in a horror dungeon? Kneeling down, I lifted the door, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling into darkness. Perfect, I muttered, grabbing my rolling pin and a tray of buns like a shield. If I'm going to hide, I might as well hide in style. The stairwell twisted and turned. Walls lined with strange, flickering sigils that pulsed in rhythm with the dungeon itself. At the bottom, I found a small room, a literal kitchen hidden beneath the floor. It had everything, a larger grill, shelves stocked with ingredients I didn't recognize, and even a strange shimmering fountain that bubbled hot dog sauce on demand. Who built this? I wondered, and why wasn't I told? A voice echoed from the shadows. Need a hand? I spun around, rolling pin at the ready. A lanky monster in a patched apron emerged, holding a spatula like a sword. Its eyes glimmered with intelligence. Name's Fryer. Been waiting for someone who actually cares about food. Heard about your stall, and well, things got messy upstairs. I blinked. You mean your homie side? Fryer's grin was unsettlingly wide. Depends. Can you cook a hot dog with 5 sausages without burning it? Challenge accepted. I nodded. Fryer clapped once, and suddenly more creatures appeared. A floating jelly-like thing carrying buns. A skeletal cat with a chef's hat balancing plates on its tail. Even the tiny girl in the antique dress, clutching a pouch of coins and grinning mischievously. I realized something wonderful. My customers were now my allies. They were ready to defend the stall, eager to help. But I couldn't relax. Vincent wouldn't give up. He had connections, players loyal to him, and a penchant for violence unmatched by most dungeon bosses. And somehow, he knew about this game's mechanics better than I did. He would hunt me. I spent hours rearranging the room, moving secret doors into hidden chambers, setting up traps with Fryer and the team. Nothing deadly, just enough to delay intruders. Imagine a slippery pile of condiments on the floor, a wall of rolling hot dogs spinning like a blender, a ceiling showering sausages like hail. If Vincent or his cronies came back, they'd get the full flavor of chaos. By the time I sat down for my first post-storm hot dog, no deluxe toppings, just simple, warm comfort, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Control. I was no longer just surviving. I was thriving, albeit in a kitchen labyrinth beneath a horror dungeon. Above, somewhere in the twisted hallways, I imagined Vincent pacing, furious, plotting his next move. Let him try. I had allies. I had secret rooms. And most importantly, I had my hot dogs. The dungeon might be dangerous and the bosses unpredictable, but at least now my stall had a fortress. I barely had time to wipe the sweat from my brow before the walls shimmered again. A scroll unfurled from the ceiling, dripping with what looked like molten ketchup. The letters, swirling and glowing, spelled out a single message. Hot dog lady, your skills are required. Fail and your secrets and your stall are forfeit. The tournament awaits. I blinked. A tournament? I muttered, clutching my rolling pin like a lifeline. The smell of chili and sizzling sausages suddenly felt like it had turned into adrenaline. Before I could react, Fryer and the skeletal cat whisked me through a hidden tunnel to a massive, cavernous hall I had known existed beneath the dungeon. A gigantic banner read, "Welcome to the first annual Hell's Hot Dog Tournament." The audience was impressive. Giant bats with glowing eyes flitted around, perched on ledges, apparently serving as judges. A few SS-class bosses lounged near the front row, chewing on popcorn made of roasted eyeballs. And at the back, Vincent's shadow loomed. He wasn't here to compete. He was here to watch me fail. A booming voice echoed. Contestants, your challenge. Craft the ultimate horror hot dog under extreme conditions. Failure will result in deletion from all game records. The rules? Absurd. Each hot dog must contain at least 3 meats, 2 cheeses, a spicy topping, and 1 surprise ingredient chosen by the judges. The kitchen included moving floors, exploding chili pits, and spinning grills. Judges' kitten would fly over your shoulder, tasting every bite mid-cook. One wrong flip could mean a chili detonation directly on you. I swallowed hard and rolled up my sleeves. All right, let's do this. The first round began. My station started spinning like a carousel. Fryer flitted behind me, passing ingredients and dodging flying sausages. The skeletal cat batted a stray chili onto a judge's clipboard. Fortunately, it seemed to impress the bats, which squeaked in approval. Vincent stalked the sidelines muttering, "She can't possibly survive this. She can't." He was wrong. I had survived far worse. The first judge, about the size of a small motorcycle, swooped down, sniffing my buns. Its beady eyes narrowed. I sprinkled chili over the sausages and added the special ingredient, a tiny ghost pepper I'd harvested from a dungeon garden earlier. The bat screeched and then licked its wings. Round 2. Spinning grills. Chili fountains that popped randomly. One SS class boss, apparently bored, tried to swipe my ingredients. I tossed it a perfectly cooked bun. The monster paused, chewing thoughtfully. Another success. By the third round, the tournament was in full chaos. Vincent, frustrated beyond reason, attempted to sabotage me by flipping my counter with a baseball bat. I ducked, sending a hot dog flying straight into his chest. He stumbled backward, yelling as a sauce-covered sausage stuck to his jacket. The audience, including monsters, bats, and random NPCs, erupted in laughter. The final round approached, the Mega Deluxe Challenge. I had to construct a hot dog tower 10 sausages high, with molten cheese cascading down. All while balancing on a platform suspended over a pit of simmering eyeball stew. Fryer and the team worked flawlessly. The jelly monster balanced ingredients, the skeletal cat stabilized the base, even a little girl in her tattered dress handed me perfectly sliced toppings. One flip, one perfect bite, and the judges, bats, bosses, and the Stitcher himself summoned magically for the finale. Erupted in applause. I had done it. I had survived the tournament. My hot dog was declared legendary. My stall untouchable. Vincent, humiliated, stormed off again, muttering about revenge, as Fryer handed me a golden spatula inscribed with runes. For the hot dog lady, protector of all buns and beasts alike, I smiled, holding it high. The dungeon was chaotic, terrifying, and sometimes deadly, but it was mine. And my hot dogs, well, they were now officially unstoppable. The dungeon had finally settled into a rare, quiet lull. My hot dog stand, now fortified with secret rooms and magical traps, hummed softly with the aroma of sizzling sausages. For the first time, I had a moment to breathe, and then the shadows moved. A familiar figure stepped from the dim corridor, blinking in the torchlight, wearing an old apron I recognized immediately. "Claire?" I whispered, heart pounding. She squinted. "Scarlett? Is that really you?" Claire, my old rival chef from the real world, once obsessed with outcooking me in tiny diner competitions, was trapped here too, looking just as bewildered and exhausted as I felt. Behind her trailed 2 other faces I hadn't expected to see, my old culinary assistant, Jonah, and a kid from the neighborhood who had once eaten my hot dogs during a summer fair, now sporting glowing tattoos and wielding a butcher's knife like a seasoned dungeon survivor. Memories came crashing back in a flood. Vincent's shadowed threats, the late nights of hiding and cooking, the fateful day I got pulled into this horror game. Each flashback was tinged with panic, betrayal, and a strange sort of comedy. The way life sometimes twisted normal things into nightmares. Claire's voice snapped me back. You have a stall?" She stared at my magical setup, eyes wide. "And these monsters, they respect you?" I smiled faintly. "Long story, but yes, and you're safe for now." Jonah scratched his head. "Safe? You mean until Vincent or some dungeon boss eats us all?" I sighed. "Exactly." We shared quick stories of how we'd each ended up here, and I realized something. Everyone had ghosts from their past, people they left behind, grudges that hadn't faded, and regrets that followed them even into a horror game. Yet here we were, still surviving, still fighting, still cooking. And then a chilling realization hit. One of the NPCs, an old diner critic I'd unintentionally angered years ago, was wandering the hall, muttering about improperly cooked sausages. The dungeon's memory of the real world was alive and watching. Claire smirked, breaking the tension. "Looks like your hot dog skills didn't just survive the game, they haunt it." We spent the evening fortifying the stall further, swapping recipes for survival snacks, and laughing at the absurdity of our situation. Fryer and the skeleton cat introduced them to the dungeon's quirks, portals that led to random kitchens, secret ingredient caches, and a few monsters who were already loyal to me. Vincent wasn't far off, I knew. His shadowy presence lingered like smoke. But now I wasn't alone. Allies, old friends, even a rival turned comrade, our combined skills could defend the hot dog stand, maybe even expand it. As I handed a deluxe hot dog to Jonah, who devoured it in record time, I realized something terrifying and exhilarating. The dungeon was vast, chaotic, and full of monsters, but my past, my ghosts, and my enemies had also been drawn here. And I was going to turn all of it into my domain. The dungeon air smelled faintly of burnt buns and vinegar, but that wasn't the only scent lingering. Anger, malice. Vincent's obsessive need to ruin me had reached a new level. It started subtly. Ingredients went missing. Chili mac disappeared from the fridge. The buns were flattened, and one of the magical warming trays was inexplicably coated in a sticky green goo. Fryer hovered nervously. "I've seen sabotage before," he muttered. "But this is personal." Claire frowned. "Vincent. He hates losing Scarlett. And he's obsessed with you. That's a dangerous combination." I bit my lip. "Then it's time we stop reacting and start striking back." The first attack came at dusk. A group of rogue players, clearly recruited by Vincent, stormed the secret chamber through a side passage. They were armed with stun guns, corrosive condiments, and oddly enough, giant rolling pins. Apparently, Vincent had been doing homework in the real world on culinary sabotage. I grabbed a tray of steaming deluxe hot dogs. "Time for the ultimate defense," I muttered. Fryer tossed me a flaming spatula. The skeletal cat batted a jar of exploding pickles toward the intruders. The battle was surreal. Players dodged flying sausages while I flipped chili bombs with deadly precision. Claire hurled buns like shurikens. Jonah tackled a rogue with a gooey mustard trap. Even the little girl in her antique dress leaned against a wall, quietly supervising the chaos. Somehow, I began to see a pattern. Vincent's attacks were coordinated but predictable. He thrived on direct confrontation, overconfidence, and dramatic flair. Exploit that, I realized. The first hot dog duel was ridiculous and glorious. One rogue player, wielding a triple-spiked rolling pin, challenged me directly. I accepted, but instead of a fight, we had a cook-off. 5 sausages, 2 cheeses, 1 secret topping, all under a spinning ceiling fan of chili bombs. I won by flipping the hot dogs into the fan, creating a chili explosion that stunned my opponent long enough for Fryer to tie him in aprons. By midnight, the rogue players had been thwarted one by one. Vincent, watching from the shadows, growled with frustration, realizing his carefully recruited army was falling apart. He finally appeared, baseball bat in hand, storming toward my stall. "You can't win," he shouted, swinging wildly. I dodged and slapped a hot dog into his chest. Chili and bacon dripped down his jacket. "Apparently, I can," I said calmly, tossing him another deluxe dog like a boomerang. The Stitcher appeared briefly, peering down from the ceiling. "Impressive," he murmured. "She's not just surviving, she's thriving." Vincent's vendetta failed spectacularly that night. Not only had I defended my stall, but I'd also discovered his weaknesses, impatience, ego, and an inability to resist chaos, especially when hot dogs were involved. By dawn, the dungeon was quiet again. My stall remained intact, my ingredients mostly safe, and my legend as the hot dog lady had grown. Vincent, however, had vanished, muttering about next time, leaving a trail of footprints shaped suspiciously like sausages. I smiled, exhausted but victorious. "Let him come," I muttered. "I've got allies, traps, and enough hot dogs to take on an army." The dungeon had quieted for now, but I knew better than to trust the silence. Vincent was plotting, and the rogue players were probably licking their wounds somewhere, cursing the hot dog lady's unstoppable recipes. I glanced around the secret chamber. Fryer hovered near the ceiling, polishing a spatula, while the skeletal cat balanced a tray of buns on its tail. Claire sharpened knives with surgical precision and Jonah was experimenting with a chili cannon that looked equal parts genius and disaster. The little girl in the tattered dress bounced in place, eyes wide with excitement. I realized something. I wasn't alone anymore. I had allies. Weird, mismatched, chaotic and terrifying allies, but allies nonetheless. The first recruit arrived in a puff of smoke, literally. A ghost with an overly dramatic flair floated into the room, swirling its ethereal cape. "Fear not. I am Mortimer, the spectral sous chef. I shall defend your stall with everything you've got," I suggested. "Precisely," Mortimer cried, striking a dramatic pose that sent a stack of buns flying. He caught them mid-air with ghostly precision. Not bad. Then came the giant eyeball monster, one single, enormous, wobbling eye. It rolled in like a tank, its gaze scanning the room. Fryer whispered, "He's mostly harmless and less hungry. He loves hot dogs." Perfect. I tossed him a deluxe Chicago dog. The eyeball shivered with delight. New allies secured. Next, sentient sausages began hopping out of the warming trays. I blinked. Guys?" Jonah grinned. I added a little magic to the last batch. "They're sentient, can follow commands." I groaned. "Great. My food can fight now." Fantastic. By the end of the day, we had an army of culinary defenders. Mortimer the melodramatic ghost, an eyeball monster with impeccable aim, sentient hot dogs, Fryer with his spatulas, Claire and Jonah with knives and kitchen artillery, and the little girl coordinating supply chains like a tiny, terrifying general. I stood at the center, arms crossed. "All right, let's set some rules. No one eats my deluxe dogs without permission. And no one." A sentient sausage bounced on my head. "Except us." It squeaked. I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. "I give up." Training began immediately. Fryer taught tactical flipping techniques. The eyeball monster mastered rolling charge attacks. Mortimer perfected haunting, distracting intruders while juggling buns. Sentient sausages learned to leap and trip rogue players, leaving them covered in mustard. The little girl drilled supply routes with terrifying precision. By nightfall, the dungeon had transformed. Corridors were booby-trapped with condiments, secret doors led to emergency kitchens, and anyone attempting to reach my stall would face a barrage of culinary chaos unlike anything the horror game had ever seen. I looked around at my allies, all mismatched, absurd, and terrifying in their own way. I realized that this strange little family, ghosts, monsters, sentient food, and humans alike, had become a force to be reckoned with. And if Vincent or any rogue players tried to attack again, they would regret underestimating the hot dog lady. Because my stall wasn't just a business anymore. It was a fortress. My friends were my army. And my hot dogs, well, my hot dogs were basically weapons of mass delight. The dungeon had grown eerily quiet. Too quiet. Fryer hovered nervously near the ceiling, tongs in hand. Mortimer twirled his ghostly cape. The eyeball monster, now named Mr. Blink, rolled back and forth like a sentry. Sentient sausages bounced in formation, ready to spring into action. "I have a bad feeling about this," Claire muttered, wiping her knives. I narrowed my eyes. "You're right. It's too quiet, and quiet dungeons mean one thing. Trouble." Sure enough, the first signs appeared at midnight. A rival faction of players, Vincent's backup team, notorious for their sneaky skills, slipped through one of the dungeon's secret passages. Their target? My secret hot dog recipe. I didn't panic. Not anymore. I had allies and a plan. Round 1. The fake floor. I triggered the hidden pressure plates, and the intruders fell onto a soft bed of sticky, sweetened dough. They struggled, arms flailing, while sentient sausages jumped onto their shoulders, tripping them further. Ha, rookie mistakes, I shouted, tossing a deluxe hot dog like a boomerang. It smacked one of them square in the chest, knocking him backward into a pile of chili mac bombs. The explosion was mostly harmless, except for the smell. They were disoriented and slightly nauseous. Round 2, the condiment maze. Fryer guided me as I lured the intruders into a labyrinth of mustard rivers, ketchup quicksand, and slippery piles of chili. Mortimer floated overhead, flicking buns down like grenades. The rival players slipped, slid, and occasionally tried to grab ingredients, only to have the eyeball monster roll over, squashing their hands with astonishing precision. Claire yelled, "They're getting desperate." Perfect. That meant round 3, the final trap. I had set up the piece to resistance. The ultimate hot dog gauntlet. Spinning grills, exploding chili, flying sausages, and enchanted buns that launched like catapults. Any intruder who made it through would be greeted by my team. Sentient sausages Mortimer, Mr. Blink, and of course, the little girl in the tattered dress, ready to deploy emergency hot dog reinforcements. Vincent's most cunning player, a masked figure wielding a serrated spatula, stepped forward, clearly hoping to claim my recipes. I rolled up my sleeves and grinned. Let's see if you can handle flavor warfare. What followed was chaos on a level that no horror dungeon had ever seen. The masked player swung, the sentient sausages leapt, chili exploded, and buns flew through the air like projectiles. At one point, a rogue player tripped, flew through a pile of onions, and landed on a giant eyeball. Mr. Blink blinked once in sheer confusion, and the rogue rolled off into a puddle of mustard. By dawn, the rival faction lay defeated, sticky, battered, and humiliated. Not a single secret recipe had been stolen. My stall remained intact, my hot dogs untouched, and my reputation as the hot dog lady's culinary fortress was stronger than ever. I looked around at my allies, each battered but victorious. Fryer gave a bow. Mortimer floated proudly, juggling buns. The eyeball monster blinked repeatedly, as if confirming its loyalty. Even the sentient sausages had formed a triumphant line, bouncing in sync. I smiled, exhausted but triumphant. They think they can steal my secret? Ha, my hot dogs aren't just food. They're weapons of flavor, and my team? My army of chaos. You don't mess with that. Somewhere in the shadows, I thought I heard Vincent's distant laughter, echoing ominously. But for now, victory was mine. And the dungeon had learned a valuable lesson. Underestimate the hot dog lady at your own peril. The dungeon was unusually still. The kind of stillness that smelled faintly like burnt sausages and impending doom. I had barely finished setting up the monster's market. A chaotic display of sizzling grills, floating buns, and impatient monsters when the air itself seemed to twist. A low, eerie hum vibrated through the floor. And the shadows gathered in a swirling vortex. From the darkness emerged a familiar figure, impossibly tall, wearing a suit stitched from dungeon flesh and shadow, wielding a giant needle the size of a spear. The stitcher had come personally. "You've made quite the mess, hot dog lady," he intoned, voice echoing like rusted chains. "All this chaos, you've disrupted my order. It ends tonight." I adjusted my apron, spatula in hand. "Order? You mean your obsession with stitching monsters together like some Frankenstein cosplay? That's cute. Now back off. This is my empire." The battle began in true horror comedy style. The stitcher lunged, needles flying, while I darted around the market, tossing deluxe hot dogs like boomerangs. Each dog hit with enough force to stagger even a dungeon SS class boss. Fryer and the eyeball monster flanked me, curling flaming condiments and rolling eyeballs at Stitcher's minions. Mortimer floated overhead, dropping sticky buns to slow the advancing stitchlings. Sentient sausages zipped through the air like tiny missiles, tripping monsters and players alike. "You rely too much on food?" The stitcher hissed, needles stabbing the air with deadly precision. I smirked. Not just food. Ultimate hot dogs. I whipped up a new batch. 10-foot-long sausages, buns reinforced with magical dough, molten cheese and chili layered with precision. I rigged them with a small enchantment Fryer had taught me. Bite triggers a minor chili explosion, splattering enemies with gooey, flaming condiment. The stitcher advanced, summoning stitched hybrids of dungeon beasts, but each time they tried to attack, they slipped on mustard rivers, got tangled in flying onions, or were incapacitated by sentient sausages with impeccable aim. At one point, the stitcher lunged directly at me, needle aimed like a spear. I ducked, flipped a deluxe hot dog and, perfect timing, the chili explosion detonated under his feet. He staggered, screeching as he slipped across the gooey battlefield, crashing into a stack of flaming buns. Finally, I channeled all my skill and creativity. With a flourish, I launched the ultimate hot dog, spinning it like a frisbee. It struck the stitcher squarely in the chest, igniting an effect Fryer had called flavor overload. The dungeon itself seemed to react. The stitcher was lifted off his feet by a gust of chili-scented wind, needles flailing wildly, until he finally crashed into a wall of buns and condiments, immobilized. Silence fell. Even the monsters paused, stunned by the spectacle. I stood in the middle of my chaotic market, spatula raised high, surrounded by my allies, the sentient sausages bouncing triumphantly. The stitcher groaned, defeated but alive. "You are the hot dog lady," he muttered, as if acknowledging a force beyond his understanding. I exhaled. "And don't you forget it." The dungeon had learned a vital truth. Chaos, creativity, and culinary skill were more dangerous than any stitch or boss power. My hot dog empire wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. And no one, not even the stitcher, could stop it. The dungeon buzzed like a festival. My hot dog stall had become more than a food stand. It was a landmark, a safe haven, a source of legend. Monsters, NPCs, and even a few curious players came from far and wide, lining up for my sizzling, overloaded Chicago-style hot dogs. Vincent, of course, hadn't given up entirely. He slunk through the corridors, muttering threats and plotting new schemes. But something had changed. Every time he tried to recruit rogue players, he found himself overwhelmed. Not by skill, but by chaos. Sentient sausages tripped him, chili bombs exploded under his feet. The eyeball monster rolled circles around him. Even Mortimer hovered dramatically overhead, hurling buns like missiles. By the third failed attempt, Vincent's frustration boiled over. He tried to confront me directly, but the dungeon, apparently aware of his ego, had other plans. A trap door opened beneath him, dumping him into a pit of soft, sticky dough. He flailed, shrieking, until a sticky, sentient sausage bounced him gently back to the surface, leaving him covered in mustard and embarrassment. I handed him a deluxe hot dog, unspiced and carefully constructed, and said with a calm, controlled smile, maybe start by learning to share. Vincent froze, sauce dripping down his jacket. For once, he couldn't find a way to intimidate me. His vendetta had ended, not with violence, but with ridiculous, absolute humiliation. Meanwhile, the dungeon's denizens had embraced me fully. Monsters I had once feared now patrolled the corridors proudly. NPCs organized food lines. The little girl in her tattered dress had become a junior manager of the supply chain. Fryer orchestrated kitchen logistics with flair. Mortimer entertained guests with dramatic storytelling. Even the sentient sausages had developed a hierarchy and were remarkably polite. And me? I finally took a breath, standing behind my stall, watching chaos flow smoothly around me. I realized something bittersweet. This was survival, yes, but it was also independence. My identity was no longer defined by fear, by Vincent, or by the dangerous twists of the dungeon. I was the hot dog lady. Legendary, unstoppable, and free. A group of monsters, once timid, now full of swagger, bounced toward me with gratitude. One, a many-eyed slime, handed me a glittering mushroom as thanks. Another, a skeleton in a chef's hat, saluted with a spatula. I laughed, the sound echoing over the sizzling grills. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt truly in control. I had defended my stall, outwitted rogue players, survived the Stitcher, and even dealt with Vincent's antics. The dungeon, once a terrifying labyrinth, was now my stage. My hot dogs were more than food. They were symbols of resilience, cleverness, and chaos. As the blood-red moon rose, casting a warm glow over the market, I served my next customer. A towering monster with 3 mouths and an extra pair of hands. He devoured the deluxe hot dog in record time, sighing blissfully. I smiled. Yes, I whispered to myself. Life is definitely worth living. And these hot dogs? They're legendary. The dungeon roared with laughter, sizzling, and the occasional squelch of sentient sausages. Chaos had been tamed, redemption had been earned, and the hot dog lady had finally claimed her throne. The dungeon buzzed like a carnival. My original stall, now fortified, enchanted, and practically legendary, had become the cornerstone of what could only be described as the hot dog empire. I stood on a raised platform, surveying the chaos. Miniature portals dotted the walls, each opening to different dungeon wings, bringing in monsters, rogue players, and a few curious NPCs from far-off corners. All of them were here for one thing, my legendary hot dogs. Mortimer hovered overhead, twirling a spatula like a conductor's baton. The empire rises, he declared dramatically, scattering buns like confetti. The eyeball monster, Mr. Blink, rolled through a new training corridor, teaching young monsters the fine art of dodging flying chili bombs while catching buns in midair. Sentient sausages patrolled the kitchens like tiny, squishy soldiers. Fryer supervised a line of apprentices, while Claire and Jonah ran advanced battle cooking courses for ambitious players. Even the little girl in the tattered dress had taken over logistics, zooming between portals on a broomstick, ensuring that every customer, monster or human, was served promptly. I waved to a group of monsters arriving through one portal. A 2-headed troll and a skeletal griffin marched in, both eagerly awaiting deluxe Chicago-style hot dogs. I laughed as one of the troll heads tried to negotiate a discount. Not happening, I said, tossing a perfectly stacked dog to each of them. These aren't just food, they're legendary. No bargaining. Vincent, of course, was lurking somewhere in the dungeon, presumably planning another ridiculous scheme. But by now, he had learned a valuable lesson. The hot dog lady's empire wasn't just one stall. It was everywhere, defended by loyal monsters, sentient food, and allies who knew exactly how to counter his chaos. I paused, flipping a deluxe hot dog onto the warming tray. The smell wafted through the dungeon, drawing monsters like moths to a flame. I couldn't help but grin. Each sizzling bite, each satisfied monster, was proof I had not just survived the horror game. I had conquered it, and in a dungeon full of terror, blood, and chaos, there was one unifying truth. Everyone, no matter how monstrous or terrifying, loved a perfectly made hot dog. As the sun, or at least the blood-red moon, rose over the dungeon, I raised my spatula high. Long live the hot dog empire, I declared. The dungeon roared in approval. Howls, cheers, and the occasional squelch of sentient sausages echoing off the walls. Chaos and order, horror and laughter, blood and chili. Everything had found its place. And me? I was finally, unquestionably, the legendary hot dog lady. And that's a wrap on today's reading here at Booked for Drama. If you felt anything, rage, swoon, secondhand heartbreak, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your fellow drama lovers. If you have any requests, drop them in the comments. Until next time, keep reading, and keep the drama on the page.